Welcome to the Atlanta Men's Workshop Speaker and Workshop Recordings. Atlanta Men's Workshop is held every spring and fall at the Rock Eagle 4-H campus in Eatonton, Georgia. That's just about an hour east of Atlanta, Georgia. Please visit our website at atlantamensworkshop.com or see the link below to find dates and details to join us. Partial scholarships are available to those in need. We hope you enjoy this presentation, and we hope you will come join us at the Rock. Until then, we shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.
All right, looking forward to our three speakers this morning. I met our first speaker, Louis K., just a few minutes ago, and I already know I'm pretty much going to like this story because he's from my favorite college town in the world, Athens, Georgia. So, and the little bit that he shared with me about getting released, I'll let him talk about that. It's pretty darn cool. So come on up, Louis. I look forward to hearing your story.
Naked. Hi, I'm Louis, and I'm an alcoholic. It's a real privilege and an honor to come share here. It's kind of overwhelming. I really wasn't trying to think about it, leading up to, coming to the Rock, and, have an opportunity to get up here and, say a few things about some of my journey and what the power, the magic and the power of the steps in my own life and the difference that it's made mine and my family's. It's, God works in miraculous ways in the rooms, and I'm just grateful that I get to be an example of that today and no longer part of the problem, So anyways, I was thinking really hard about how to kind of describe the end, and, it really doesn't matter. To briefly describe it, I was homeless for years. I'm an ex-homeless street junkie, and I lived, in and out of jail on the streets for years before I got here, estranged from my son that was born almost 17 years ago. Just detached from society, and it wasn't until I was removed from society for the last time, and taken off the streets by the police, that I was finally able to have a little bit of time away from, the insanity, that my head could even clear up enough for me to even want to hear anything else, other than what I was doing. It wasn't about getting drunk or high or anything like that for me anymore. It was about, you get to a spot, and everybody in here knows what I'm talking about. When it's not about getting loaded, it's just about blotting out the sad state of my existence so that I could exist and not have to feel, you know what I mean? Because life sucked. And, the pain was just always there. And all I wanted to do was be numb so I didn't have to think. The lingering thought of suicide was daily. I used to say I was too cowardly to pull the trigger, but thank God that I didn't, because my life today is it's pretty awesome. So anyways, they took me off the street, and I remember waking up foot cuffed to a hospital bed, because I guess in the process of them arresting me, my vitals, I was shooting meth, and my vitals were pretty messed up, so they had to hospitalize me for a while before they were able to send me over to population where I would start the journey. I remember getting to jail and being really grateful, because anybody that's been homeless, you understand, like just having a place to sleep and knowing it was just like, man, I don't got to run anymore, man. It was like, sadly enough, I felt at home in jail. So anyways, I got out, didn't stay, completely abstinent. I relapsed again. And within 48 hours after being locked up for a while, I was back in handcuffs. Almost died in the intake. They took me out of there. They sent me back to the hospital because it was just a simple misdemeanor. and they shot me up with something. And the next thing you know, and this is where is the moment of clarity, whatever. God intervened in my life, I believe now. I was 3, 4 in the morning, and I was looking for a key at what I thought was my dad's house, and I turned around, the police had me at gunpoint, and I didn't know where I was. I thought I was at my dad's, and I just remember getting my hands up in the air, because I came to, kind of, and I just said, I need help, man. And instead, miraculously, him not taking me to jail, he took me back to the hospital. And from there, I ended up in Athens, self-admitted myself to a recovery center. You know, I remember early on, being really, really excited about, I get to this recovery center, and I'm still considered homeless, man. I hadn't had an address in years. But I get to this recovery center, and they're like, hey, man, because I didn't have any clothes. The only set of clothes I had was out of the lost and found bin when they released me from the jail, because my stuff had gotten wet because I tried to run away, because I'm not going to jail. You're going to catch me. You know, I put them tax dollars to work. But so my clothes were all molded when they had locked it up in the property bag, and I get my stuff, and I'm like, well, that ain't going to work. So anyways, I get, different size shoes that don't fit me or whatever, and that's what I left the jail. That's all I had to my name. And I get to the rehab, and they give me this voucher, and they said, Lewis, you can go down there and you can walk to the Salvation Army, and they'll give you a couple pairs of pants. They'll let you pick out a pair of shoes. You get your T-shirt, jacket, a couple shirts or whatever, because to help me out, starting back again. So that was the beginning. I remember being at the rehabilitation center, and I just was, for me, it was a lot about, in the beginning especially, it was a lot about, I was constantly, because I'm insane, right? I didn't have the Bill Wilson bright light moment. Mine's been very, very slow and gradual. Sometimes slow, super slow for me. So I get to I'm very excited about recovery. I try to go to a lot of meetings. They make you sign your sheet, and I'm getting my sheet signed. I've got probation in multiple counties, so I'm trying to, navigate getting rides to go this guy so I don't go to jail next week. And I remember specifically, and I'll tie this together okay, I'm doing good on time. I got this letter from child support because I was a deadbeat dad. And I opened the letter, and it's like, Lewis, you owe somewhere around about $15,000. And I can't pay $15,000. I don't have a job, or I'm just kind of working like labor ready kind of stuff, digging ditches for the rehab owner and stuff like that for $8 an hour, and I owe $15,000. They're like, not only that, but you start paying now, or there's consequences, because of things that I had done before I'd gotten here. I'd piled up a lot of consequences. That was a big one. It was a pretty big one. It was a little bit overwhelming, and I almost left. There was a couple days in there, and my sponsor at the time, Bill T., I remember calling him, and I was walking down Oglethorpe, and I called him, and I said, you got to have something good, because I'm about to leave. I got to go. He said, where are you at? And I told him. He said, well, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go back to the rehab, and I want you to get in the shower. Turn it on as hot as you can get it. And after you do that, stand in it for about a minute, and then throw it to the cold water, and then call me back. I didn't have nothing else, man, so I'm like, what do you got? So I did it. I called, and I felt a little bit better. I was blessed with having a sponsor that was actually a doctor. I'll tell you a funny story about him, too. The first time he came to meet me, this guy was 40 years or so of being an addictionologist. He was what I like to refer to as a samurai in here. And before he would allow me to start to do step work with him, he would make me, because I'm living in a live-in place for long term, and he would make me piss in a cup before he would allow me to do step work with him, because he thought I was still high. That's how, if that can kind of give you a description of what I was, going through when I got there. It was insanity, man, It was always one step forward and 3 steps back. In the beginning, I was not working the steps, and I was not, I was not leaning into the solution. I was trying to fill that God-sized hole with a lot of exterior things, women, or try to buy things when I had money that I didn't need to be buying. And eventually what happened is about a year and a half into my coming back, I hit a wall, man. And when I hit a wall, I was suicidal, in recovery, and I started dabbling again, drank a little bit because it wasn't working. I was just uncomfortable and just insane, and like ping pong balls between my ears. And I wanted to die. I was sitting in, at that point I had gotten to an apartment, a little bit more money. I'd been paying some of these bills a little bit at a time, making a little bit of headway. I'm still almost completely unemployable at that point. Right before that last drink, I had lost my job, and I just was sitting in a pile of my own mistakes. And at that point, I no longer had any, and I remember thinking that, like, man, I know I don't have an excuse anymore. I'm sitting here, and all I'm doing is creating wreckage because I'm the problem. It was like this epiphany I had. I thought about my son, and who I worked so hard to, get, quote unquote, doing these things that were better, and it wasn't anything. It was all show, man. It was just, look at me and what I'm doing, and this to make myself look better. And there's a whole nother level of self under all that. So when I hit that wall, I got to the breaking point. My last whatever was November 2nd, 2019, and I just had enough. Again, hit another bottom. I called Bill. I said, all right, what do you got? And he said, well, let's work the steps. And from there, I started to pick up some of these tools and really get into the book. Page 45 in the big book, it says that basically the whole point of this thing is to get me to God, and build on that relationship. I was extremely agnostic, and that's probably my favorite chapter as of now in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is We Agnostics. Because that's me, man. That's me. That's a bunch of me. If you ever listen to Joe and Charlie, they break that one down pretty good. It's interesting how they do it. But page 45, it talks about the whole point of the book being, just to get me to God. I'm a firm believer that God led me to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that Alcoholics Anonymous in turn then led me to God, and that's been my experience. I work day to day now, to build that relationship. Steps 1, 2, and 3, 1 and 2, just a conclusion of the mind, man. That's it. Either he is or he isn't, and am I powerless? Step 3, make a decision, and then vigorous action when you jump into 4. And all 4 through 9 are to remove these things out of the way that are blocking me off from God. When I get those things out of the way, I start to get to, bask in the sunlight of the Spirit, start to become usefully whole, that I, in turn can become useful to other people, and try to carry the message that I have, that I've been blessed with, to try to maybe affect somebody else in a positive way. 10, 11, and 12 are, for me, the growing steps. That's day to day. Me, God, and then you. That's it. I like how Earl Hightower said. He said, nobody else to play with. He's exactly right. I wake up in the morning, 84 through 88, 86 through 88. Upon awakening, I do it right out of the big book. I've been doing it for years. I hit my knees. I ask God, to get me out of the way and, direct my thinking. Tell me what I can do to be useful to you today. And then on page 87, right there in the middle, I've got a prayer that I've concocted that I kind of break. For me, especially the 11th step for me, it's something I work consistently to try to break up the monotony. I move books in and out of my rotation for my morning routine to try to keep it, ever growing. And that's been helpful for me. That 10th step, if you remember, anybody that's worked the 4th step, you remember back on page 67, when Bill's already calling out, am I selfish, resentful, dishonest, or afraid? He's teaching me those things that later on I'm going to be using in day-to-day life. So that when I get, and I've done it, I've actually done some of these things. There's a guy sitting in this room right now. I do a lot of metal work, and I was on a job site one day, and I was a little bit out of sorts because somebody had said something to me because I'm sensitive, and these are things that I used to be willing to die for if somebody was to try to step on my ego, especially in a group of people. Like, these are things that I consider disrespectful. At a point I was, I would want to, what do you call that? Respond with negative force. You know what I'm talking about. Violence is not in my, I can't do that. That's not acceptable in my life anymore. But, so anyways, in the moment, I found somebody immediately, like on page 84, I said, hey man, can I talk to you for a minute? I told what happened, found the wrong, and the guy that I owed the apology to, I said, I'll call him later. I'll call him tonight, and my buddy looked at me, he said, he didn't even say a word. I was like, all right, God, I'll go tell him sorry right now. So I went and said sorry. I prayed and I asked God to bring me somebody to help and show me how to be useful, take away the anger, and it was gone, man. And then I got this new guy who's never been to the Rock, never had any real service commitments. That night we were, I took him to the diversion center where I have a weekly commitment to take a meeting into the guys coming out of prison. Fixed it right out of the book, Wow. For a guy that couldn't stay out of jail for more than a couple days to that, God has made me useful. It's amazing. Yeah. But anyways, I've got, I pulled an excerpt. I've actually got a first edition copy of As Bill Sees It. Isn't that cool? But Bill Wilson on page 25, he said, we have to grow or else deteriorate. For us, the status quo can only be for today, never for tomorrow. Change we must. We can't stand still. Now, if you go to the big book on page 85 right there in the middle, it talks about complacency. And for me, it's speaking about that long-term sobriety and that 10th step and that continuation of how I carry the message and continue to find the next guy that I can give this thing away to so that this thing keeps, continues to spread. That's the whole point, right? God has given me an opportunity to be returned, from the gates of hell, and to be able to come out here and, share my story with you guys, or, give somebody a ride, or help the old lady across the street with her trash, or whatever. How can I be useful? And that's the point for me today. I came in here, with all these, a lot of financial consequences. And there's one amends in particular that I wanted to share with you guys. I shared about the $15,000 in the rear. And in the beginning, I was required. People don't want their money, they want, or my money, they want their money. That took a long time to learn. Especially when you owe people money, if you're buying things that you don't need to buy, there's a whole other level when God starts to work on you. Man, I don't really deserve this, It just doesn't feel right. So anyways, I paid my child support off. This is probably 3-4 years ago. Paid my child support off. And I've got an older son. He's in school. School calls. Michael's sick. I said, okay. I go up there. I pick him up, take him to take him over, what do you call that, the CVS or whatever, get him some, I think it was like a cold or something, get him some cold medicine, get him some soup, crackers and whatnot, and took my son to where he lives with his mother, dropped him off. About an hour after that, I get a phone call, and it's from my ex-wife, my arch enemy, that told me that I was dead. She said what I would have said, because I deserved that, because I had been a scumbag and I hadn't been a father. And she called me, and she just said, man, she said, I don't know what happened. She said, I don't know what happened to you, but you've changed, and I didn't think it was possible. And I was like, I wish I could take credit. She said, but I want to thank you, because you don't know how much it means to me to not have to raise that boy by myself. My biggest fan, I was homeless about a year before I got somewhere to go. I called her on a Thanksgiving, and I wanted to talk to Michael, and she said, no, but I'll tell you this. That boy had to draw what he was grateful for today. And he drew a picture of you piece of, you know what? And dude, I'm telling you, I was living in a shower unit that I made this house with a tarp on the side of a hill off in the woods somewhere. That's where I was living. And that burnt through the soul of me, man. It just burned. It hurt. She was right, you know. Today I've got a home group, got a host of friends. I now apparently own a business, which is it's pretty interesting. 103 steel for any of you old heads. Hopefully you guys understand what that 103 means. I am married to a beautiful woman who I'm faithful to. I've got another son who I have the opportunity to be present and raise today. I mean, these things to me were, I never could have ever imagined. We have a home, a home. I've moved 50 to whatever, 100, whatever times, I moved from woods to woods, been evicted from bathrooms. I got evicted one time from a little league bathroom I'd moved into. It woke me up, man, you gotta go. I said, all right, I'll see you, sorry. God's been able to use me, and this for me, man, it's just beginning. I'm brand new. If I'd have thought in the beginning and tried to write down what I thought I was going to get out of this, I would have got it all wrong. And it's only because of us that I get to be here. So for all you guys, just want to let you know, man, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm just grateful to be here. That's all.
Thanks, Lewis. That was awesome. Our next speaker is a fellow I've gotten to spend a little time with down here at the Rock. And if one of the beauties of being at the Rock is take some time and talk to somebody you maybe don't know and get to know them a little bit. And we have been on several occasions able to talk about some real stuff. And he's helped me, and I hope I've helped him. And he's got some peace and serenity about him. And I'm really looking forward to hearing Tom M. come tell his 20-minute story. Come on up, Tom.
Good morning. How y'all doing today? So, kind of funny, Bill asked me a couple of times, he's like, so what do you want me to say when I introduce you? And I'm like, I got nothing, He said, I'll figure it out, So, anyway, I'm here. My name's Tom, I'm an alcoholic. I'm supposed to talk about the magic and the power of the steps, and that's what I'm going to try and do. And I was thinking as I heard, and Lewis, great job wherever you are. I was thinking that it's the magic and the healing power of the steps is what I'm feeling this morning. And so I'm going to try and breeze through. My sponsor and I have talked about the concept of a step zero before. And I believe step zero is pretty much my whole life before I got to AA. It's like all the stuff that got me ready to come to AA. So I'll give you a brief history of that, some highlights of some of the fun stuff I did, and then I'll try and work my story into the steps and connect with some things I feel are important right now. So I got this long outline that I've written for doing my story before, and it's about 8 pages, and I was reading it the other day. I hadn't updated it in a long time. And it's like my story has changed. The stuff that happened hasn't changed, but the way I look at it has changed. So it's garbage. I can't use it right now. It's not pertinent. All the stuff's true. It's just kind of not the way I look at things. Anyway, so I grew up in Maryland, in D.C., right outside of D.C. I'm the 5th child of 5, and there was a 6-year gap between me and the next oldest one. and my oldest sibling is autistic, and so there was a special needs child in the family. There was this big gap between me and my brother, and I say that to say I was kind of raised without a lot of supervision. And I was born in '67, so I did a lot of my growing up in the '70s. It was a crazy time where there was a lot of kids running around without supervision, and I kind of idolized the older kids because I hung around with my older brother as much as I could. He was 6 years older, and so whatever he was doing in the 10th grade, I was trying to do in the 4th grade. Whatever he was doing when he was a senior in high school, I wanted to do when I was in the 6th grade. And I hung around with the kids down at the park that had bottles of Jack Daniels and bags of pot and playing music and stuff, and I just thought that was cool. And I think they thought it was kind of cool that here's this little hey, little Morgan, what are you doing? So that's what I thought was normal. But I also had this other side of me where I had these friends that were actually doing good in school, and so I had this sort of dual life that goes on to this day. But I think back then it was really I had good friends and I had the other friends, and so I would kind of veer between both worlds. I'd get in trouble and then I'd kind of pull back, and I think in the 5th grade I got in trouble for breaking into a house, and I was in the juvenile court system. And I remember when I got sort of let off on the first offense thing, I celebrated by chugging an airplane bottle of booze that I had stashed. And I was thinking, if you're in the 5th grade and you celebrate getting off on a court case by chugging an airplane bottle, you might just be an alcoholic. That's just kind of how it went, but I hear everybody's story, I've just felt different. I never felt comfortable in my own skin. And alcohol helped. That's why I loved drinking alcohol, y'all. I just loved it. So anyway, I somehow managed to go to college, get through college, and once again it was kind of like a hell of a lot of drinking, and I would sort of have a good semester, I'd have a bad semester. I just managed to get through, and I was never really happy, never really living up to my potential. And I just, if I don't cut to the chase, I'm going to talk about just a whole bunch of stuff, which is I just drank a lot, and I didn't drink every day. What I would do is I would hit it real hard on the weekends or Thursday through Sunday, and then I'd try and clean up, and then I would do that again, and so really from the time I was in high school until I was 36, I really wanted to quit, but I just couldn't do it on my own. I quit thousands of times, but I would just always drink again. There was always an excuse, a trivial excuse, as it said in the book. Monday Night Football. You have to drink when you're watching Monday Night Football, right? Whatever. So, and then I heard somebody talk about last night, just drink a few beers and don't get wasted every time. And it's like, if I could have done that, I wouldn't be here. So, by the time I moved to Atlanta 30 years ago, 1995, and I had sort of talked my way into this new job with this company that builds apartments, and I basically went from being a field guy to assistant project manager, and my career sort of took a big jump, and so all of a sudden I'm making pretty good money. I got this good job, and met the woman who would be my wife, my first wife, and everything seemed like it was going good. And she and I decided we were not going to be drinkers anymore. She had told me some of her history. I told her my history. And so we kind of didn't drink together. We were each other's drug there for a while. And And so basically 2 children came out of that, and everything sort of changed. They were born prematurely, and it was a really stressful time with raising these little babies that were severely underweight. They were in the hospital for a long time, and so what do? At the exact wrong time, we both start upping our drinking, and I never wanted to be that kind of dad, and I hated my dad when I was growing up, and I forgot that one key part from childhood is when I was 16, my mother died of suicide, and there's a whole lot of stuff in there, but I blame a lot of things. I blame my dad for everything, and so of course he was the bad guy there, and so that's why she died. And so I had always said I do not want to be the kind of dad that my dad was when I was growing up. And so now I got these 2 children, and I'm starting to drink more, and I'm starting to see, after a couple of years, I'm becoming exactly who I did not want to be. And life just got weird. When the kids were born, I had the kids, I had a beautiful wife, I had this house that we had just built, I had, a good job, paid off cars, it's like, and everything seemed like it was great. But I was empty on the inside, and then the drinking started, and then, my now ex-wife, or she's my ex-wife now, but my wife at the time, she started upping her drinking. She started using a little bit of outside issues, and everything just went to hell really fast. And Lewis was talking about being a dad, and I think I want to pick up on the part of that. I mean, we're all, it's a men's workshop. We got a lot of dads here and a lot of future dads here. There was something about having those kids that just sort of raised the stakes for everything. I had been off and on miserable my whole life. My mother had committed suicide, and I realized that option was off the table. So I just thought, I'm just sort of destined to be mentally miserable my whole life. And drinking kind of helped that for a while, but then it didn't work. So now here these kids come, and it's like, man, it just raised the stakes of the game, and something had to change. And I'll tell this story, and I'll try and get into the steps. So my wife at the time, we sent her to treatment, and while she was in treatment, I got the phone bill, and the phone bill was a detailed bill, and I found out, she was having an affair. And I confronted her about it, and she admitted to it, but she said it was over. And as soon as she got back from treatment, she, basically started drinking and using again, and I knew she was lying about the affair, and not telling the story very well, but it was a period of time where I couldn't stand that. It felt like I had to do something. And I was thinking about suicide, homicide, and it was either going to be, I was going to kill me, her, or him. And I realized that the girls would be impacted by any of those 3, so that was off the table. So there was a guy named Neil. He was the superintendent on this job that I was working on. And I was kind of the program manager. And I asked Neil, I said, can I talk to you about something? And he said, yeah, and it was weird. He said, is this about Alcoholics Anonymous? And I'm going, no, but maybe. And I think I'd shown up to meetings, maybe smelling or something. And anyway, I told him about my predicament, about this guy, and I told him what I wanted to do was I wanted to dump a load of dirt in this guy's yard, and could he arrange this? And if you know anything about the industry I'm in, you know how insane this is. This guy was highly paid, and I'm asking him to do this. We had been a little friendly, and he said, had the same thing happen to me when I was young, and I'll think about it. And a couple days go by, and I asked him about it again, and he basically said, look, I'm 18 years sober in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and this is totally against what we should be doing. He says, but if you're serious, I'll do it. Because I know how you feel. He says, but it's wrong, and you're going to have to make amends for it someday. And if I do it, I'm taking you to an AA meeting. And I said, okay. So this guy drove over there in his pickup truck with a dump truck behind him. And he pushed the cable wire up with a stick so this guy could get in there and dump this load of dirt on this guy's driveway. Anyway, long story short, he drives me by there and shows me he did it, and then he goes and tells me his AA story at lunch, and then took me to my first meeting. That guy was just crazy enough for me to identify with him. He was an iron worker, Vietnam vet, awesome guy, still sober today. And he sort of was my bridge to the program. And then after, he was only my sponsor for a couple of weeks. And then I met my sponsor, Bill. And I've had Bill for 21 years. And through Bill, I met my grand sponsor, Aubrey. And those two guys, were like fathers to me. And taught me how to be a better father. And taught me to love my real father. And so by the time, anyway, getting way off track here. So when I finally got to the program, I had gone through all that stuff. I had tried to quit a million times on my own. I was confronted with step one. Could I admit I was powerless over alcohol? Absolutely. I had tried to quit so many times. I had failed so many times. Was my life unmanageable? At this point, yes, my life was totally unmanageable. I'm just didn't have any idea where to go, what to do. So for the first time, for a consistent period, for a length of time, both conditions of step one were met. I was powerless over alcohol, I could admit it, and my life was unmanageable. Before that, I could sort of have one part of that on one day, but I wouldn't have the other part. This was like an extended period where I was like, yes, both parts of step one applied to me. I was ready. And I feel like because I was ready, I was very willing. I was beat into submission. I had the gift of desperation. And I was just ready to do what y'all told me to do. And I got to my first meeting, and I really felt like I was at home. I really felt like you got me, and I belonged. And so, in step two, it talks about God, restoring me to sanity. It says God could restore me to sanity. It didn't say would, it said could. And, as I said, I was given a God right off the bat, gift of desperation. So then I come into AA, and I found a group of drunks. And that was an awesome God, because y'all loved me. It was, people were nice to me here, and I felt relief in the hour I was in the meeting and talking to people after the meeting and going to lunch with my sponsor. I felt like I was getting support. And so one GOD became another GOD, and over time I've developed a spirituality that continues to this day and continues to evolve. And I was reintroduced to organized religion, and I do that sometimes, and it continues to evolve beyond that. And nothing is inconsistent with that religion. It just seems like stuff gets added to it and it grows. And I had a lot of misconceptions about the steps, and especially step 3. So when I get to step 3, what it says is I have to make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand God. So I thought that meant like I had to turn over my will and my life, which I really didn't understand what that was. I had to do it right now. I had to do it absolutely, and there was no take-backs. And so, I would turn my will over, my life over in the morning, and then I would have some crazy thought or whatever, and I'd say, well, I blew it, I blew it again. What I've come to believe is that decision really means I'm going to persist with AA. I'm going to stay with the program. I'm going to stay with the steps. I'm going to keep doing AA stuff. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep trying. And somebody told me about, this will and life. And it didn't make sense for a long time, but it does make a lot more sense now. It's been described that my will is kind of like my thinking. I don't really do anything that I don't think about in advance. And so if I allow my thinking to just sort of spiral and get negative or obsess about something that's not healthy, well, pretty soon I'm going to do that thing. And then once I've done it, it becomes part of my history, therefore it's part of my life. So my thinking is my will, and my life is really the sum of my actions that I've actually taken. And so by making this decision, I'm just basically saying, okay, I'm going to try and follow what the program is telling me to do, and stick with the rest of the steps and just keep on going on this journey. So then it takes me to step 4. Step 4, I look at that. I remember I didn't think I was that mentally messed up when I first got to the program, but I really was. And I would look at that. I would look at that little table on that page in the book, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And so my first attempt at the 4th step was really just a writing down of pretty much anything I didn't want to think about or talk about. And it was a long list, but and here my sponsor, he said the only way to do a 4th step wrong is don't do one. And so my first 4th step was just 1 minute, was a long list, and I'm going to need more time. And that worked for the time being. And then I went back, and there's great study guides that have, multiple pages and multiple columns, and I've done that, and that's been successful. My 5th step, I did my first 5th step with a priest, and that's a story it would take forever to tell, but at an Episcopal church that I go to meetings at, and that was just an amazing evidence that God's real, and that God's with me and giving me messages all the time to keep going and encouragement. 6 and 7 are there's worlds within worlds, and 6 and 7 for me. The first time I did 6 and 7, it was really quick. It was really cursory. I've come to believe that there's a lot going on there. Like, for me to really be, willing to get rid of something, first of all, I've got to be aware of it. And then I've got to be sick of myself about it. And so when I can first become aware of an issue to the point where I start thinking about it and realize, man, I really don't like this part of me, then I become willing. And then the step 7 part is I can't fix me. God has to fix me. My own sick mind can't fix my own sick mind. So I have to have help. So I have to really just humbly ask, and then be willing to wait until God chooses to remove it, or if it's to His benefit not to remove it right then that's what it is. And God does the work. Some people I sponsor, I feel need to be pushed, and some people I think are so hard on themselves they just need to relax. And I think 6 and 7 is a good place for somebody like me. I have to relax and let God do the work and just guide me. So, in 8 and 9, I made this list, and I'm trying to speed up. I had to be willing to at least put it down on paper. And so, put everything down on paper, even if I'm not going to make the amends. So I told you about the dirt guy that was sleeping with my ex-wife. About 8 years sober, that really started bothering me. I remember Neil saying, "You're going to have to make amends for this." So I freaking called that guy. And he answered. And I've got other stories of guys who I said, they'll never answer. I'll just leave a message. They always answer on the second ring. So this guy answers the phone, and I tell him my name, and I said, "Do you remember who I am?" He, "Oh yeah, I remember." And all I had to say was, about the dirt. Like my big thing with that dirt was, he's gonna know who it is, but he's not gonna be able to do anything about it, because he's gonna know I'm in construction. It was obviously me, but what's he gonna do? Go to the cops, So anyway, I said, about the dirt, and he goes, "Oh yeah." And I apologized for that, and I tried to explain, a little bit, and he kind of cut me off. He says, "Man, it's me that needs to apologize," and I couldn't believe it, but me and that guy were at peace, and I know if I ever ran into him again, we would be cool, and it was. I thought about maybe his part of things and my part of things, and maybe what my ex-wife had told him, and you just never know. Like, I might have done the same thing if I was in his shoes. So anyway, I've forgiven him. I talked about dads, and I hated my dad. I blamed my dad. And, this program softened me up. This program made me realize my dad didn't really have a dad. My grandfather was an alcoholic who died on the streets in Milwaukee. My dad didn't really have a father. And he hung in there. And even though I was so belligerent towards him, he reached out and continued to help me, especially when I was sober and needed money to fight for custody for my girls. And he lent me about $50,000 without batting an eye. And I always thought this man was cheap. And if without his money for, bullets fighting that war, I'd have not had those girls would not have been saved. So I'll finish up. My dad was somebody who was not perfect, but he kept on trying to grow. And by the time he died at 91, he and I had made peace big time. And I loved my dad, and he loved me, and that was because of these steps. That was the healing power of these steps. And so look, I gotta get done here. So I try to practice 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. When I'm wrong, I sometimes I'm quick to say I'm wrong and I'm sorry, and sometimes it takes me a while. And I've had to do that with family members. I've had to do that with others. But, I definitely feel like because I have a great sponsor and great role models and great people I hang around with, I do try to practice these principles in all my affairs. And I'm not perfect, but man, my life is so much better. And this rock has been a big part of my program. I want to mention that. Thank you so much for asking me to do this, and thanks for being here at the Rock. And that's all I've got, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So let's hang in there. And when I got here, when my brain started to clear up a little bit, y'all kept telling me, because I will complicate anything, they started saying, keep it simple, keep it simple. And so there's, y'all taught me the recipe for getting sober, which is I call it the 6 things, which is to go to meetings, get a competent sponsor, work all 12 steps, learn how to pray, work with others, and learn how to have fun sober. And when we do that stuff and we practice it, mainly the 12 steps, which is the program, this is the fellowship, this is not the program. The program is the 12 steps. When we do that, we end up putting time together. And I've known Jack for a long time, our next speaker, and we don't go to the same meetings, but I've heard through the grapevine. So this is my official chance to wish him a happy 50th year of sobriety. Happy birthday, Jack. Come on up.
I got a timer. I don't need one. My name's Jack Busco, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, and I appreciate being asked to do this. I wasn't really aware of what this entailed. I thought it was just like, informal sit at a table and, answer questions or something. I didn't realize it was stand up and talk up here at the lectern. But Lewis, who did such a great job, was all dressed up with a tie. I saw him in my cabin this morning. I said, oh, crap, I'm supposed to wear a tie? I didn't know I was going to be standing up here, but then, it's nice because Tom, who also did a great, man, I can relate to these guys so much. But he was a little less formal, and I'm all the way down to the bottom. And had I known, I would have dressed a little better, so I'll apologize. You don't really care that much, but I'll apologize to the people that taught me how to be sober, because they told me that you always wear a tie, and I thought it was stupid and old-fashioned in 1975 when they told me to do it, and I still think that, but I still do it because as long as I've been doing it, I stay sober. So I'm sorry I'm not dressed a little better to stand up here in front of you guys today. So magic and power. I grew up in Pittsburgh, drank a lot, did everything you're supposed to do to get here in the program, started young, grew up in the 60s, did everything everybody else was doing in the 60s, and wound up in AA at 22 years of age. So now I'm 72. And at the beginning of the week I celebrated 50 years of sobriety, which is... So if that's not magic, I don't know what is. To go from where I was when I came into the program, just aimless, I thought I was smart and I had so many great ambitions and things I wanted to do, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't pull any of it off. And I talk about this a lot, that I was incapable of saying no when it came to a drink or anything else that could get me out of where I was. Stuff I hated to do. If you walked up and handed it to me, I did it. I had to take it. I could not say no. And then I came into AA, and I started to do what you do, and all of a sudden I could say no. I don't know how that happened. I really don't know how that happened, except I have to attribute it to a power greater than myself, because I couldn't do it before that, and all of a sudden I could. So magic and power. And the more I recognize that I don't have the power, the more appears in my life when it's needed, and that's the magic of the steps, I guess. That's the power of the steps. So let me tell you about the steps. When I got sober, I had no trouble with the first step. Right? I came into the program completely broken and desperate, and when they said, you're powerless over alcohol and your life's unmanageable, I said, yeah, no kidding. I'm going to try not to curse up here. I feel fairly relaxed around you guys. I love coming up to the rock, but up here I try to be a better example, I guess. Anyway, but that was, so what? I mean, why would I pick alcohol out of all the things I'm powerless over and work on that? I'm just nuts. Nothing seems to work. I'm just crazy. And I was convinced that I was broken in ways that could not be fixed. So for me, the miracle of the program happened when I got the second step. Because up until then, I didn't believe anything could make me sane. Like I said, I think if I had tried to go I have nothing against therapy, psychiatry, anything like that. They do wonderful work. I've had therapy that helped me a lot in the past. But if I had gone that route and not AA, I think I'd still be there, trying to figure out why am I the way I am, right? Why do I feel the way I feel, right? Thank God for AA and the guys who told me, we don't care how you feel. We don't care what you think. We don't care why you're that way. What are you going to do today? All right? It's a program of action, they told me. It's a program of action. And I wanted to think my way out of everything because I thought I was a pretty smart guy. And boy, a big disappointment in my life is that that knowing stuff doesn't really help here. Yeah. You know, being able to quote the big book is a nice thing, but that does not keep you sober. It's what am I going to do today to stay sober? That was the lesson I learned, and thank God for that. So, yeah, so when I came to believe that I could be restored to sanity, when I started to see a little glimmer of hope, that it was miraculous, literally miraculous for me. But I was, Matt talked yesterday about how he went to rehab before he started drinking or using. Well, I was so screwed up, I went to rehab when I was 3.5 months sober. So, the fear was starting to wear off. I was still nuts. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't figure out anything. They kept saying, be honest. Can you be honest with yourself? And I had no idea what that was. I really couldn't tell. So I went to rehab, and the state of Pennsylvania paid for it, which was nice, through a program that they had for young people. And they sent me to this place called Chit Chat Farms. It's now the Karen Foundation, a big organization, but at the time it was just this place in Wernersville, Pennsylvania. When I was there, I was talking to a counselor about some of my worst stuff. And he said, you need to go and tell your little group about this. I said, there's no way I can do that. But I did. It was July 7th. I remember that because on July 7th in the 24-hour book, I read it just before I had to go and talk to my group, and it said someday, let's see, I forget how exactly it said, but someday you'll see the reason for this, that this is a time of testing, and we have to burn stuff out of our natures and this kind of stuff. It was like the hand of God wrote that page just for me that day, and I was able to go and tell these people about something I was never going to tell anybody, and I burst into tears, and I came out of the room, and I had one of those spiritual awakenings, a spiritual experience that changed everything for me. Before that, I like to describe it that I was like a jigsaw puzzle. The pieces were everywhere, and all of a sudden, just like that, it was all together. It just kind of crystallized, and I felt like I was part of everything. I felt like I was part of you, and I felt whole, and I felt hope, and that's never gone away. I don't know why I got that, but I got that. I needed it, I guess. I still screwed up plenty of things. I still did lots of stuff wrong. But that's been with me and has sustained me, and I've tried to share that. And I should say, too, that, the third step, turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. I do not understand God. I don't even know if there's a God. I want to say this, that, they told me to pray. And so I prayed, got on my knees this morning, just like I've been doing this whole time. Asked for help. Maybe I'm talking to myself. I say thanks at night on my knees. I pray to God, I meditate, and I don't know if there's anything there or not, really. I like to believe there is, and sometimes I have a lot of faith. Sometimes I think it's ridiculous. But as long as I've been doing this and acting like there's a God, here I am with 50 years, just like there's a God. I don't mind talking in front of people. I've been doing this my whole life in different jobs and consulting. I always had to do presentations. I've been a teacher for the last 23 years. Years before that, I taught in university. But I get so emotional talking about this stuff that it's difficult. So I have to do those first 3 steps every day. Every morning, and I remind myself over and over all day long, surrender, 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 surrender. And I am not in charge. There is so little I'm in control of. When I'm taking guys through the steps and we do the third step, we get on our knees and do the prayer, and then I say, okay, now, look in the big book, look at those columns, go home, get started, and call me. Tell me that you started, because the way you know you did your third step is you're writing your fourth step, right? You really are going to turn your will and your life over. You better get into action again. You better be doing something about it. And so the first time I tried to write the fourth step, I took a legal pad and I wrote 11 pages front and back of my thoughts about what I thought an inventory was. And I went to my sponsor, who I hadn't asked for direction at that point. I just started. And I showed it to him. I said, I don't know what this is, Pete. You know, what do I do with this? And he said, throw it away. So what do you mean throw it away? So insulting. Yeah, he said, take out the big book, draw those columns, do exactly what it says there. And I did, and that worked. Fifth step, I also did with a priest the first time. Although, I want to say this. So I believe in doing the steps in order. When you're doing the steps fully, you do them in order. There's a reason for it. You develop, you grow spiritually. We're trying to do all that stuff that the big book talks about. But, in this, if you're new, you do not have to wait to dump your crap on somebody if you need to. You don't have to wait to do a daily inventory. You don't have to wait to pray and meditate until you're on the 11th step. Right? I mean, there's the principles of the program that we practice that get us sober and keep us sober and make us productive people that, we try to do as much of this as we can. And so I did do a full fifth step, but that first piece of it that I did in rehab changed my life. I needed to get rid of that in order to be able to move on. So fifth step's pretty important. There was an old timer named Marty in Pittsburgh who, whenever anybody went out, the first question he would ask is, did he do a fifth step? Because our secrets will kill us. And the great thing about a fifth step is that, and this is my experience hearing guys and talking to people and my own personal experience, is that we, agonize over pulling this stuff out of our guts to tell the truth. And then whether it's one person you're talking to or a group of people, like the sex and sobriety thing last night, I was privileged to lead a group there. The reaction is, me too. So what? You and everybody else. And it just, it's so liberating. That's what connects us. All I ever really wanted was to have connections with people, to feel a part of. And I've got that in AA. All right, and then when you're working the steps, or when you're going through the steps with a new guy, a sponsee, you kind of do them yourself. And at every point, I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, this is the most important step. This is the one. But I feel like that about every one when I'm doing it. And the sixth step is. The longer I'm sober, the more important that step is to me, because that's where my sobriety is. That's where quality of life is, right? Is me and my character defects, and how much am I willing not to engage in them today. I have this daily email I get about AA thought for the day, and a lot of times it says, if I want to get rid of my character defects, I'm going to have to stop doing them. And it's pretty simple. And it really comes down to that willingness. What am I willing to do? What am I willing not to do today? So I keep working 6 and 7 as best I can. I'll tell you a couple of quick stories with the time I have left. The 9th step was huge for me, going and making amends. 10th step, daily stuff. 11th step. So my one sponsor died. I've had 4 or 5 sponsors die on me, because I always find old guys that have what I want, and now I'm old, and so they're way gone now. But a sponsor died, and I got a new sponsor, and I asked him. I was sober, I think, 6 years when I asked Bill to be my sponsor. I said, what step do you think I should be on? He said, the 11th step. I said, okay, the 11th step, so I'll work on prayer and meditation as best I can. And some years later, we were talking, and I said, yeah, Bill told me to be on the 11th step, and he just kind of smiled. And 20 years later, I mentioned it at a meeting again. I said, Bill told me to be on the 11th step. And then when he died, I got another sponsor, Tom, who some of you knew, and I mentioned it to him, and he just smiled too, and he didn't tell me to do anything different. So I've been working the 11th step since 1981. All right, so, and the 12th step. We talk about carrying the message. That's almost all we ever talk about, the 12th step. and we ignore the practice of these principles in all our affairs. That's the big part of the 12th step. That's the hard part. Carrying the message is kind of fun, but yeah, practicing these principles in all our affairs is hard, really hard. So I'll tell you, let's see, I'll tell you an amends story, because this is one of my favorites. This is my favorite amends. I had to go to the neighborhood I grew up in. There was some, organized crime and disorganized crime and all that kind of stuff. And there was a guy who was connected, kind of low-level guy, who had a beer distributor in Pennsylvania. You can, if you want to buy quantities of beer cases and things like that, you have to go to a beer distributor. He piled his cases up next to a window in the parking lot in his place. And so my brother and some friends and I would go down there once in a while and break the window and pull bottles out of the case and like throw it into a trash can or whatever and run off down to the railroad tracks and drink. And then he finally put some bars on the window, but the bars were like this far apart. So we'd break the window and reach in through the bars and pull the bottles out. So I was sober a couple of years, and I realized I was going to have to go make amends to this guy, and I didn't know what he was going to do, because I don't know how scary he was, but he could have been. Anyway, I went over to his place, and it was like a movie, it was a summer day, and a couple of these guys in the white T-shirts, they're kind of goon guys, were standing there. I said, hey, I'd like to talk to Charlie. And I said, what do you want to talk to Charlie for? It's just a personal thing, I'd just like to talk to him. He came out. I told him the story. I said, I got some money for you that, I said, I'm really sorry about that. And he was really nice about it. And he said, wasn't that Gary? Wasn't he always with you? I knew it was him doing it. I said, and it was the truth. I said, he was never with us, and that was kind of a nice thing, because then he had suspected this kid all these years, and it wasn't him. And not too long after that, Gary died of an overdose. And is that connected in any way? I don't know, but it's meaningful to me that when he died, there was one less person that had ill feelings. My brother Mike is coming out from LA to speak at a meeting tomorrow that my sponsee Jay and some of our other guys have arranged to, a celebration. So I was telling Mike this story, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and he said, oh my God, he said, I can't believe it. He said, I needed something. I forget what the whole story was. But for some reason, he said, I had to go in Charlie and ask him something, and he like fell all over himself trying to help me. He said, I wonder, why was he being so nice? It's just these little connections, and I guess it was because he thought less badly of us. So we were fairly well known in our neighborhood, me and my 3 brothers. Little things, but they mean a lot to me. They're very meaningful. And here's my favorite 12-step story. I got to do a lot of 12-step calls up until I was sober, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years, and as they sort of started to fall off. So I and another guy, a guy I grew up with who was sober, we were sober a few years. We got a call about a young guy who needed help. I guess his girlfriend had called and said he wanted help, and so we went over to his apartment, and it was right on the sidewalk was the door, right? And so we opened the door, and this guy was in front of me, and he stepped in and went back like, oh my God! And we looked in, and this kid, he didn't know what to expect. He just knew we were coming over from AA. He had pulled an armchair over in front of the door. He was sitting there with a can of beer in one hand and a butcher knife in the other. He didn't know what we were going to do to him. But we talked him into, setting the stuff down, and we talked to him, and he didn't get sober right away, but eventually he did get sober. And there's a whole other story about that, but I only have 40 seconds left, so I won't tell you that story. I am really grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be able to share with you. Just another bozo on the bus, as they say. This is not false humility, because I'm not really known for humility, I don't think, but I recognize that I can learn something from every one of you, and that I never know as much as I think I know. And I listen to you, and all of a sudden the light goes on. I say, oh my God. And that's what I get in spades here at The Rock. This is like a total inundation of that stuff. And I'm glad you're here. Thank you for asking me, committee. And my time is up.